Simpler. What if I told you that one simple habit could begin to change your life starting tonight? Not next year, not someday tonight. Most people spend years searching for complicated systems, secret formulas, and magical shortcuts. But real transformation rarely comes from complexity. It comes from a single decision repeated daily. One habit that quietly reshapes your mind, your discipline, and ultimately your destiny. Many people want change, but very few begin with awareness. They want better results, better opportunities, a better life, but they never pause long enough to honestly look at themselves. Growth does not begin when circumstances change. Growth begins the moment a person becomes aware of their own habits, their own thinking, and their own choices. The truth is that a person cannot improve what they refuse to recognize. If someone spends years repeating the same behaviors, making the same mistakes, and thinking the same thoughts, life will continue to deliver the same outcomes. Awareness is the moment when the fog begins to lift and reality becomes clear. It is the moment when a person stops pretending and starts observing their life with honesty. Many people go through their days on autopilot. They wake up, follow routines, react to situations, complain about problems, and then go to sleep believing the world is responsible for everything that happens to them. But the person who grows begins to ask deeper questions. They start looking inward instead of outward. They begin to notice how they spend their time. They begin to notice the words they speak. They begin to notice the habits that quietly control their future. And sometimes that awareness is uncomfortable. It reveals wasted hours, broken promises to oneself, and opportunities that were ignored because of fear or laziness. But that discomfort is not punishment, it is guidance. It is the awakening of the mind. There is also a spiritual dimension to awareness that many people forget. Human beings were not created to live blindly. They were given the ability to think, reflect, and examine themselves. Faith teaches that the heart must remain awake. A sleeping heart drifts through life without purpose, but an awakened heart begins to recognize truth. When a person becomes aware of their actions, they start realizing something powerful. Every moment of life is a responsibility. Time is not simply passing, it is being recorded. Every word, every intention, every action carries weight. There is a deep emotional moment that comes when someone truly becomes aware of this reality. They begin to understand that the days they wasted will never return. The chances they ignored cannot be relived. The life they are living today is slowly becoming the story that will one day be remembered. And that realization touches the heart in a way that no motivational speech ever could. It makes a person pause and ask themselves difficult questions. Am I becoming the person I was meant to be? Am I using my time wisely? Am I living with integrity when no one is watching? This awareness awakens a sense of responsibility, not only toward personal success, but also toward the Creator who entrusted life itself. When someone realizes that life is a trust, their perspective changes. Every action begins to carry meaning. Every day becomes an opportunity to improve character, strengthen discipline, and become a better servant of purpose. A person who lives with awareness no longer moves through life carelessly. They start paying attention to their thoughts because thoughts eventually become actions. They start paying attention to their actions because actions eventually become habits. And habits slowly build the direction of a person and a entire life. Awareness also touches the emotions deeply because it forces honesty with oneself. No one else needs to witness that moment. It happens in silence, in the quiet space between a person and their conscience. It is the moment when someone admits that they have been capable of more. It is the moment when someone recognizes the value of the life they have been given. It is the moment when someone decides they no longer want to live unconsciously. And that awareness becomes the seed of transformation. Most people move through life so quickly that they rarely stop to examine what they are doing. Days become routines, routines become habits, and habits slowly shape a person and a future without them even realizing it. When life is lived without reflection, mistakes do not disappear, they simply repeat themselves in different forms. Reflection is the quiet moment when a person pauses long enough to look honestly at their actions. It is the discipline of stepping back and asking what really happened today. What did I do right and where did I fall short? Without reflection, mistakes remain invisible. They hide behind excuses, distractions, and busy schedules. A person may blame circumstances, other people, or bad luck, never realizing that the real lessons are waiting inside their own actions. But when someone begins reflecting on their day, the hidden patterns begin to reveal themselves. They start noticing the time they wasted on things that did not matter. They recognize moments when anger spoke louder than wisdom. simpler. They see opportunities that were ignored because fear felt more comfortable than courage. Reflection shines light into places that were previously ignored. And light has a powerful quality. It exposes what darkness hides. This is why reflection can sometimes feel uncomfortable. It forces honesty. It removes the comforting illusion that everything is fine. Instead, it gently confronts the truth that improvement is needed. But this discomfort is not something to avoid. It is something to value. Simpler. A person who refuses reflection will continue repeating the same mistakes year after year. But a person who reflects regularly begins learning from every experience. Failure becomes a teacher instead of a permanent defeat. There is also a deep spiritual dimension to reflection. Many people remember to review their work, their finances, or their plans, but they rarely review their own character. Faith teaches that a wise person examines their actions before they are called to account. When someone reflects on their behavior with sincerity, they become more mindful of their intentions and their responsibilities. In those quiet moments of reflection, the heart becomes softer and more aware. A person remembers that life itself is a trust, and every day is a chance to grow into a better version of themselves. Words that were spoken carelessly begin to matter. Choices that once seemed small begin to reveal their long-term impact. Reflection also awakens gratitude. When someone pauses to think about their day, they start noticing the blessings they overlooked while rushing through life. The opportunity to wake up, the ability to work, the presence of people who care. These are gifts that often go unnoticed until reflection slows the mind. And with that awareness comes humility. A person realizes that they are still learning. They recognize that perfection is not the goal, but progress is always possible. Each day becomes a classroom, and every mistake becomes a lesson waiting to be understood. Emotionally, reflection creates a powerful inner conversation. It is the moment when a person stands face to face with their own conscience. No audience, no applause, no excuses, just honesty. And in that silence, something meaningful begins to happen. A person starts correcting small mistakes before they grow into bigger problems. They begin adjusting their behavior one decision at a time. They slowly build wisdom from experiences that once seemed painful or confusing. Over time, reflection turns ordinary days into opportunities for transformation. Hidden mistakes that once controlled a person and a past future become visible lessons guiding them toward a better path. Progress in life rarely begins with answers. It begins with questions, honest, uncomfortable, deeply personal questions that force a person to face the truth about where they are and who they are becoming. Many people avoid these questions because they are easier to ignore than to confront. It is far more comfortable to stay busy, distracted, and surrounded by noise than to sit quietly and examine one and a past's own life. But real progress begins the moment someone becomes brave enough to ask themselves the truth. Not the easy questions that protect the ego, but the real ones that challenge the heart. Am I using my time wisely? Am I becoming better or simply getting older? Am I living according to my values or just following the crowd? These questions carry power because they break the illusion of comfort. They interrupt the routine of living without direction. When a person begins asking honest questions, they stop drifting through life and start taking responsibility for it. Many people want progress, but they only ask convenient questions. They ask how to become successful, but they rarely ask why they waste their potential. They ask how to achieve their goals, but they rarely ask what habits are silently sabotaging them. Honest questions remove excuses. They expose the gap between intention and action. They reveal the difference between what someone says they want and what their daily behavior actually proves. And when that gap becomes visible, a person can no longer pretend that change is impossible. This moment can be emotional because it forces a person to face themselves without filters. There are no distractions, no applause, no external validation, only the quiet voice of conscience asking difficult questions. And that voice is powerful. There is also a spiritual depth to asking honest questions. A thoughtful person understands that life is not random. Every moment carries responsibility. Faith teaches that intentions, actions, and choices all carry meaning. When someone asks honest questions about their life, they begin examining not only their success, but also their character. They begin asking questions about their sincerity, questions about their integrity, questions about whether their actions align with the values they claim to believe in. In those moments, the heart becomes sensitive. A person begins realizing that life is more than achievement, it is accountability. Every opportunity is a trust. Every ability is a blessing. And every day is another chance to become better than yesterday. This awareness touches the emotions deeply because it reminds a person how valuable their life truly is. Time is passing whether they notice it or not. The days that feel ordinary today will one day become memories. The choices made today are quietly building the story that will define their life. When someone asks honest questions, they begin to see how much potential has been placed inside them. They realize that they were never meant to live carelessly or aimlessly. They were given intellect, conscience, and the ability to choose a meaningful direction. And that realization awakens something powerful inside the heart. Instead of blaming circumstances, a person begins examining their effort. Instead of criticizing others, they begin correcting themselves. Instead of waiting for motivation, they begin creating discipline. Honest questions slowly transform thinking. They push a person toward growth, because once the truth is seen clearly, ignoring it becomes impossible. A person who regularly questions themselves begins improving naturally. Their decisions become wiser. Their priorities become clearer. Their character becomes stronger because every day they are willing to examine themselves with sincerity. And that quiet habit of asking honest questions begins guiding them toward real progress. One of the greatest turning points in a person and a past life happens the moment they stop making excuses and start accepting responsibility. Excuses are easy. They protect the ego, they comfort the mind, and they allow a person to explain away failure without ever changing their behavior. But while excuses may feel safe, they quietly steal growth. Every excuse places the power for change somewhere else. People say the circumstances were wrong. They say the opportunities were unfair. They say the timing was bad or the environment was difficult. And sometimes those things may even be true. Life is not always fair. Challenges are real and obstacles can be heavy. But the danger begins when excuses become a permanent habit. When that happens, a person slowly loses control of their own direction because responsibility has been handed over to circumstances. Responsibility is different. Responsibility is the moment when a person looks at their life honestly and says, "My future is influenced by my decisions." It does not mean everything that happens is within their control, but it means they accept ownership of how they respond. That shift is powerful because it returns the power of change back to the individual. The moment responsibility replaces excuses, the mind begins to think differently. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" a person begins asking, "What can I do better next time?" Instead of blaming the world, they begin improving themselves. This mindset is not easy because responsibility requires humility. It requires admitting that some failures came from lack of discipline, lack of focus, or lack of preparation. Facing that truth can be uncomfortable, but it is also liberating. Because if your actions played a role in your situation, then your actions can also create a better future. There is also a deep spiritual dimension to responsibility. Faith reminds us that life itself is a trust. Every ability, every opportunity, and every moment of time is something entrusted to us. A person who understands this begins to see their choices differently. They realize that excuses do not erase accountability. Words may justify behavior in front of people, but the heart knows the truth. When someone lives with awareness of their responsibility, they become more careful with their actions, their intentions, and their use of time. This awareness touches the emotions deeply because it reminds a person that their life has meaning. They were not created to drift aimlessly through excuses. They were given the ability to choose discipline, integrity, and growth. And when someone begins living with that understanding, their mindset transforms. They wake up with a stronger sense of purpose. They work with greater seriousness. They begin correcting mistakes instead of hiding from them. Responsibility also builds strength of character. A person who accepts responsibility becomes reliable. Their words carry weight because they no longer search for ways to escape accountability. They face their commitments and their mistakes with honesty. Emotionally, this change can feel like a burden at first. Taking responsibility means no longer hiding behind comfortable explanations. But soon that burden turns into strength because responsibility creates self-respect. When you know that you are doing your best, improving daily, and owning your actions, something powerful happens inside the heart. Confidence grows not the loud confidence of arrogance, but the quiet confidence of integrity. A person who accepts responsibility becomes the architect of their own progress. Their energy shifts from complaining about life to building a better one. Excuses slowly lose their power because they are replaced with action, learning, and determination. In a world filled with constant noise, Many people have forgotten the power of silence. The mind is always surrounded by distractions, phones buzzing, endless information, opinions from every direction, and the pressure to move quickly from one task to another. In the middle of all this noise, the mind rarely finds the space it needs to think deeply. Yet clarity in life rarely appears in chaos. It appears in quiet moments. Quiet thinking is the discipline of stepping away from the noise long enough to listen to your own thoughts. It is the moment when the mind slows down and begins examining life with calmness instead of confusion. Many people run from silence because when everything becomes quiet, the mind begins asking questions they have been avoiding. But those moments of stillness are where understanding begins to grow. When a person sits quietly and reflects on their life, problems that once felt overwhelming often begin to look different. Situations that seemed impossible suddenly reveal options that were hidden by emotional reactions. Quiet thinking allows the mind to move from panic to perspective. It separates feelings from facts. Most people react quickly to situations. They make decisions based on frustration, fear, or temporary emotions. But quiet thinking creates distance between the problem and the reaction. That space allows wisdom to enter the conversation. A calm mind sees what a rushed mind cannot. There is also a deep spiritual connection between silence and clarity. Throughout history, people have recognized that the heart becomes more aware when the noise of the world fades away. When a person steps into quiet reflection, they begin to feel a deeper sense of presence and accountability. In those moments, the mind becomes more sincere. The heart becomes softer. A person remembers that life is not simply about rushing through days. It is about understanding the purpose behind those days. Quiet thinking often brings a person closer to their conscience. It reminds them of values they may have ignored while chasing temporary distractions. It brings attention back to what truly matters: character, intentions, and the responsibility that comes with the life they have been given. Emotionally, these quiet moments can be powerful. A person may suddenly realize how quickly time is moving. Days that once felt endless are slowly becoming years. Dreams that were once clear may have been buried under routine and distraction. And in that silence, the heart begins to speak. A person starts remembering the goals they once cared deeply about. They begin thinking about the kind of life they truly want to build. They notice habits that are helping them move forward and others that are quietly holding them back. This awareness is not loud. It does not arrive with excitement or applause. It comes gently, almost like a whisper inside the mind. But that whisper carries truth. Quiet thinking also strengthens decision-making. When someone regularly gives themselves time to think without pressure, they become more thoughtful about the direction of their life. Instead of reacting to every situation impulsively, they begin responding with wisdom and patience. They start seeing patterns in their behavior. They recognize opportunities they previously ignored. They notice the difference between what feels urgent and what truly matters. Over time, this habit of quiet thinking builds a clearer vision of life. Confusion slowly fades because the mind is no longer drowning in distractions. Instead, it becomes organized, focused, and aware of its direction. And in those quiet moments, when the world slows down and the mind becomes still, clarity begins to rise within the heart. Discipline does not appear suddenly in a person and a pause life. It is not something that arrives through motivation or temporary excitement. Discipline is built slowly through consistent awareness of one and a pause actions and the willingness to examine them honestly. One of the most powerful ways this happens is through daily evaluation. At the end of each day, when the noise of responsibilities fades and the mind has a moment to breathe, the person has a valuable opportunity. It is the opportunity to look back at the day and ask simple but powerful questions. How did I use my time today? Did my actions move me closer to my goals or further away from them? Did I live according to the standards I claim to believe in? Most people avoid these questions because evaluation requires honesty. It is easier to end the day with distractions than to face the truth about how the day was spent. But the person who wants growth chooses a different path. They take a few quiet minutes to review their actions with sincerity. This daily habit slowly builds discipline because it creates awareness of behavior. When someone begins evaluating their day regularly, they start noticing patterns. They recognize moments when they allowed laziness to replace effort. They see how small distractions stole hours that could have been used for meaningful work. They remember promises they made to themselves but did not keep. At first, these realizations can feel uncomfortable, but discomfort is often the beginning of improvement. When the mind sees the truth clearly, it becomes harder to repeat the same careless behavior again. Daily evaluation also creates accountability with oneself. When a person knows they will review their actions at the end of the day, they become more mindful throughout the day. Decisions are no longer made carelessly because there is an awareness that those decisions will be examined later. This awareness quietly strengthens discipline. Instead of wasting time without thinking, a person begins choosing their actions more carefully. Instead of postponing important tasks, they begin handling responsibilities with greater seriousness. Discipline grows not through pressure from others, but through a personal commitment to improvement. There is also a deeper spiritual element to daily evaluation. Faith reminds us that every action carries meaning and that life is not simply a series of random moments. When someone reflects on their day with sincerity, they become more conscious of their intentions and their character. They begin asking themselves whether their actions were honest, whether their words reflected kindness and integrity, whether they used their time in a way that honors the blessings they have been given. These reflections awaken humility within the heart. A person begins to realize how valuable each day truly is. Time is not an endless resource. Each day is a portion of life that will never return. This realization touches the emotions deeply. A person may remember opportunities they ignored or moments when they allowed anger, pride, or laziness to guide their behavior. But instead of becoming discouraged, daily evaluation turns those moments into lessons. Every mistake becomes guidance for tomorrow. This is how discipline grows, not through perfection, but through continuous correction. Each evening becomes a small checkpoint where the mind resets, the heart reflects, and the intention to improve becomes stronger. Over time, this simple habit transforms the way a person lives. Their days become more purposeful because they are no longer drifting unconsciously. They are paying attention. They are learning from their experiences. They are adjusting their actions one step at a time. And through this quiet process of daily evaluation, discipline slowly begins shaping their character and their future. Many people believe that great lives are built through dramatic moments, big opportunities, sudden success, or powerful breakthroughs that change everything overnight. But the truth is far quieter than that. The foundation of a meaningful life is rarely built in a single moment. It is built through small habits repeated day after day. The things people do consistently may seem small in the moment, but over time they quietly shape the direction of an entire life. A few minutes of learning every day strengthens the mind. A few moments of reflection sharpen awareness. A small act of discipline repeated daily builds character. These habits often appear insignificant at first. They do not create instant applause or visible rewards. But like seeds planted beneath the soil, they grow slowly and steadily until one day their impact becomes impossible to ignore. Most people underestimate the power of small actions because they are focused on immediate results. They want quick progress and visible success. When results do not appear quickly, they lose patience and abandon the habits that could have changed their future. But growth rarely announces itself in the beginning. It happens quietly. A person who reads a few pages every day may not notice a difference in a week, but after a year, their thinking becomes sharper and deeper. Someone who practices discipline in small areas of life begins developing the strength to handle greater responsibilities. Small habits shape the mind, and the mind eventually shapes destiny. There is also a powerful spiritual reminder hidden within the idea of small habits. Faith teaches that even the smallest actions carry value when they are done sincerely. A kind word, an honest effort, a moment of patience, these things may appear minor to the world, but they carry meaning far beyond what the eyes can see. Life is not measured only by the size of achievements, but also by the consistency of character. When a person practices small, good habits every day, they are quietly building a life of integrity and purpose. Emotionally, this understanding can be very powerful because it removes the pressure of needing to change everything at once. Many people feel overwhelmed by the idea of transforming their lives. They believe success requires dramatic change, extraordinary talent, or perfect circumstances. But the truth is far more encouraging. A life can change through simple daily decisions. Choosing to wake up with purpose. Choosing to learn something new. Choosing discipline instead of comfort. Choosing honesty even when no one is watching. Each of these choices may feel small in the moment, but together they create momentum. Day by day, they shape the habits that eventually define a person and a past's character. And character quietly builds reputation, trust, and influence. There is also something deeply emotional about realizing how small habits shape the future. The person someone becomes years from now is being built today through ordinary decisions. The way time is used today, the way people are treated today, the way responsibilities are handled today, all of these moments are slowly constructing the story of a life. Every small action is like a brushstroke on the canvas of one and a past future. Some people wait for big opportunities to prove themselves, but the wise understand that greatness is not created in rare moments. It is prepared in daily habits that no one sees. And as those small habits continue to grow quietly within a person and a past life, they begin shaping something far greater than they ever imagined. Never underestimate the power of a few quiet minutes with your own thoughts. When you review your day with honesty and intention, you begin directing your life instead of drifting through it. Success does not belong to those who simply work harder. It belongs to those who learn, adjust, and improve every single day. Start tonight. Reflect honestly. Improve tomorrow. And watch how one simple habit begins to transform your entire life.